Welcome back. A first on this broadcast, I am going to quote the wise sages from Fox and Friends, specifically Brian Kilmeade, who today, when defending the president's policy of forced family separation, said, quote, "Like it or not, these aren't our kids. Show them compassion, but it's not like he is doing this to people of Idaho or Texas. These are people from another country." A lot of you folks are yelling at the TV right now saying, "Damn right." And a lot of you folks are pulling out your hair in disbelief that anyone would be so cavalier about separating children from their parents, and those who would wholeheartedly agree. But if you are a fan of the president and what he is doing, consider this. A lot of folks pulling out their hair right now are not only Republicans, but they're conservatives who vote. And there's a midterm election coming, and the consequences for this president couldn't be bigger. Yes, it could impact the governor's race and the state legislature, but who controls Congress will determine not only the president's agenda in Washington, but also possibly impeachment, should the special counsel find grounds for it. And joining us for more are President Trump's 2016 and maybe 2020 Florida campaign chair, Joe Gruters, Cheryl Wilson, the chair of the Manatee Democratic Party, and Zach Anderson, the political reporter of the Herald Tribune. So, Joe, what do you think about that?
Well, listen, I think the president said he didn't want to separate families. I'm glad he reversed the policy.
But
I think it was a mistake. But the laws were on the books. I think Bill Clinton signed it. I think it was happening under Obama. It doesn't matter who started it. It was a mistake. I'm glad that Donald Trump came out this week and corrected the issue. We shouldn't be separating families. It's wrong. I have kids. Nobody wants to see families separated. But the problem that we have to ask ourselves as a country is, do we want to have a country with borders? So and the problem is these Democrats, now it's not enough. Reuniting the families is not enough. Now they're saying they want the parents.
Hold on 1 second.
Now they're saying they want the parents.
So today the president tells the GOP, stop wasting time on immigration.
Because the Democrats now said, okay, it's okay that we're now reuniting the families, but now we should allow the families to go ahead and walk into America without going through the proper channels. The question is should we have borders or not? And the question is if we want to have a free flow of people, it's okay, but people should admit that.
Alan, your question, though, was what does Joe think about the comment that was made on Fox News? That was your question. And your observation is that a lot of Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, regardless of whether they support the president or not, are pulling their hair out over what the president has said, what the president has done. That was the question. And what I'm glad to see is that the party that is the family values, the moral high ground, the ethical people are finally finding an issue where they can say, whoa, this is enough.
And you mentioned to me right before we went on the air, George Will has just written about this, basically encouraging Republicans to vote for Democrats. You've heard a lot of other conservatives like Orrin Hatch saying that the policy of separating children was wrong. What kind of danger does this really mean for the president and the Republican control of Congress, or, as I said, even in local races?
Yeah, George Will, a longtime conservative columnist, came out and said that people should just vote for Democrats to basically act as a check on president. And it seems like what drove him over the edge was this immigration issue, and it just shows how bad of an issue this is politically for the GOP. However you feel about immigration, most people, the majority of people, do not like the idea of taking children away from their parents. The Republican Party, they were starting to see some encouraging signs. Trump's approval rating is up. The economy is doing well. Republicans don't want to be talking about this. You saw both local Republican congressmen here in this area, Vern Buchanan and Tom Rooney, come out against this. There was a lot of pressure on Trump, and it was fairly remarkable to see him backpedal. He usually doesn't back down, which just shows how bad of an issue this was for Republicans.
We should be thanking our president for reversing the decision and reuniting the families.
Well, it was his decision.
Everybody here should be, we all agree that kids should not be separated. The president agrees, he's made the decision, let's move on. Now the Democrats, though, want to allow open access into America for the entire family. That's the big question now. Do we want borders or not? Do we want to have a country of laws or not?
Well, and the law is that families or individuals seeking asylum are not breaking the law. And a big group of the people at the borders and a big group of those children were asylum seekers.
They're all coming over, being educated by
how come I never
attorneys right before they head in.
Why don't I ever recall any Republicans complaining about Cuban refugees getting on those rafts, some of them drowning between here and Cuba. Once they reached the shore, the moment they stepped on it, they were welcome into this country.
That was a unique situation, but that's it.
Well,
the
no,
question
that was 25 years ago
right,
as well.
But they were also fleeing oppression. And you know what's going on in places like Guatemala and El Salvador right now. These people are running out of a burning house, and they're grabbing their children and looking for some place to go.
So I think there's 11 embassies in Mexico that they can go to and seek asylum. They don't have to go all the way to the border. What's going on here is these guys are being trained. They're saying, listen, go to the border, seek asylum, and you get a free pass into America. That's not fair for everybody who's been going through the system trying to do it the right way. The question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want borders or not? And if you don't want borders, then fine. Right? Then that's a policy decision. I'm saying we need borders as a country to move forward together.
We're getting warmed up. Our conversation on the Week in Washington will continue after a quick break.
It's getting loud, too.
Welcome back. We are talking about the Week in Washington, and joining us for more is President Trump's 2016 Florida campaign chair, Joe Gruters, Cheryl Wilson, the chair of the Manatee Democratic Party, and Zach Anderson, the political editor of the Herald Tribune. This immigration issue, what's been happening down on the border, has so dominated all news headlines over this week that we really have to continue to talk about it. And here is, I don't know anybody who really understands what Melania Trump did yesterday. On one hand, she goes to the border, she tours one of these facilities, a good thing, showing that she and the president and the administration care about these children, and I believe we have the photo that everybody's talking about at this point. She wears a cheap jacket that says, "I really don't care, do you?" Now, Joe, I don't understand this from any particular angle. Obviously that's not something you want to say when you are going to visit children who have been separated from their families. I don't think anybody believes what the president is saying, that it was a message to the news media. And even if she wanted to send a message to the news media, this place, this time, as she's going to visit these children, doesn't make sense from any angle.
98% of the news that's coverage on the president and his family is all negative. I think it's exactly what it was.
So you're going to make that point as you're going to visit children separated from their families. You're trying to show that you care, and you're wearing a billboard that says, "I don't care."
She doesn't care about what the media says and what the fake news is and what they're putting out about the president nonstop and the family. Listen, the president cares deeply about everybody in this country, immigrants, non-immigrants,
you really believe that?
children.
Yeah, Alan, I was going to call BS earlier, but I'm really going to call BS on that one. You know, I'm with you. I was very glad to see Melania Trump make the trip. It was encouraging to see that she was going to be there, but you know, the conclusion you can come to is, one, she is tone deaf, two, she is badly controlled, or three, she is the First Lady of passive aggressiveness. There is no explanation for it. She has a history of doing it, and we wonder who the passive aggressiveness is aimed toward.
It's aimed towards the media and their constant lies about the president and the media and the negative coverage over and over again.
We've learned to tune him out on his media attacks. We've just learned that that's going to be the argument that's going to be presented.
And that's why he does the rallies directly with the American people.
And you know, the media is fair game. If you want to criticize the media, go ahead, but why be ambiguous about it? Why do it on the back of your jacket? Why not just come out and say you don't like the media coverage? I don't feel like I'm, qualified to comment on the First Lady's fashion choices, but I will say that, when you are a public figure like the First Lady, and you do something, people are going to scrutinize everything that you do. So I do think it's fair game to ask, what did she mean by this? And it is odd that she would make a statement like this when she's going to visit immigrant children at the border.
And apparently it was called to her attention during the visit, and she put the jacket back on to wear it again. So again, I come back, she's either tone deaf, she's controlled, or she's sending her own message.
On the other hand, one of the most incredible angles to this week was the Time magazine cover, and I believe we also have that with the little girl who was obviously crying. It was the picture was taken from a scene shot in Texas this week, and President Trump looking over on the girl and really kind of captured what the issue is in terms of these children at the border. But Zach, it turns out that the photographer who took that picture was never sure whether that child was removed from its mother. The child's father says, in fact, the child wasn't. So that really calls into question everything that the president and many of his supporters say about, I dare say, fake news, and how the media is so often unfair to this president.
Yeah, I don't think it was, the Time did the media a good service here by, not, kind of vetting this a little bit more. And I think they did run some type of correction that sort of said that this girl was never taken away from her parents. But you need to really be airtight about this. The media has come under a lot of criticism. Obviously, conservatives are very suspicious of the media. The president has accused the media of making things up. I don't believe that. I think most journalists are very ethical and try to do their job and get the facts right and tell the truth as best as they can ascertain it. But when you're not doing your due diligence, and it did seem like with this cover that they were sort of, the assumption was that this girl had been removed from her parents. So, whether or not they meant to make that explicit or not, I think that you do have to be careful about these images.
Cheryl, obviously, and Zach really kind of said it all there, but it does, show how polarized we have become on this issue, because there are a lot of people who are yelling into their TV sets. Well, they usually do when I'm on anyway. But this is what they say. These are the comments that they leave. And in fact, this was a mistake that should never have been made.
This was a mistake that should have never been made. It's unfortunate that it happened. But the message that it sent is still the message of the day.
But that's, you can't say that the message is correct when the photo is wrong.
Messages are sent with words. Messages are sent with images. Messages are sent with photographs. The photograph was wrong. The setting was not completely clear on how it was attributed. But the message that was being sent was the same, whether it had been said with words, whether it was a sketch of a child that the president's looking at, or whether it happened to be a photograph.
Joe, I'm not going to let you off the hook here with a softball reaction to this. What I will say is that if Time magazine is apologizing for this factual error that was really bad, and ABC News had to apologize for something else that they did earlier this week in terms of accusing Paul Manafort of manslaughter, these news organizations are apologizing when they screw up. And it's fair to ask, why doesn't this president apologize when he lies?
What we've seen here, just from what you just heard from Cheryl here, is a continuing pattern of facts when it's good for you. The problem is the cover was a lie. The child was not separated from the parent. The dad came out and said that. And Time, I think, actually this afternoon came out and said they defend the cover as it was printed. The problem is the reason why the public is so upset. The media is filled, especially the national media, maybe not you and Zach, but the national media is filled with liberal elitists who are part of the swamp, who are trying to change the direction of the country, and if you're not in that mindset, they're going to take you, they're going to try to do everything they can to take you out. 98% of the coverage on this president has been negative, and it's not acceptable.
Well, I mean,
when all the positive things that are happening.
You still didn't answer Alan's question. Why doesn't the president apologize like the media
did? He did. He said it was a mistake, and he changed it. At least the president's willing to say, okay, we made a mistake, and we're going to go and we're going to change this policy and reunite families. What do the Democrats do? They say, well, it's not enough. Now we want the families to get free reign into America, a golden ticket.
We're not talking.
That's what's going on.
What my question to you is: the president tells mistruths often, and I don't see a lot of Republicans calling him out when he does that.
The president's doing a phenomenal job leading this great country.
That's
He's doing a phenomenal job,
You're
and
three
we're
for
very
three,
That's not
Joe.
my question.
You're 3 for 3.
Are you concerned that when the opinion is one thing, facts are stubborn? Why don't a lot of Republicans call him out? If anything,
I think Republicans do, and sometimes I think a lot of Republicans have called him out. But the problem is nobody ever calls the Democrats out because all they do is attack the president. We need a fair and balanced media, and thank goodness for Fox News to come and provide that balance on our side.
My comment to Alan was that magazine cover was a mistake and should have never happened. I can say
Zach,
that.
you get the last word here.
Well, I think you make a good point, Alan. The media does try and come out and correct errors when they have them. I think Time defended this cover. You know, you can question that. I bet they were basically saying what Cheryl said, and that the image was a photoshopped image. Obviously, it wasn't necessarily a journalistic image, but it was taking something that was true that happened and using it for a photo montage to try and make a point about the president. But there was some errors within the story, I believe, that said that she was actually separated from her parents. So it's a complicated issue, but I think the media does try and overall get it right and correct things when they're wrong.
Okay, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in just a moment. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. Big news in the race for governor today, at least on the Republican side, the President Trump making an endorsement of Ron DeSantis, not Adam Putnam, who has been the front runner for a long time, well known to this community, has the support of a lot of Suncoast Republicans. Joe, what is your take on this?
I think the president sticks with his friends. I think the Congressman DeSantis was with him early, and I think he's rewarding him. The question is will it be enough in a primary to help DeSantis win? The thing is Adam Putnam, DeSantis is a great conservative congressman. He's on Fox News all the time. He's going against Adam Putnam, who's basically been running for governor for 20 years, and who's probably made 50 or 60 or 70 trips here to Sarasota to meet with everybody you could imagine who has relationships that he's had for decades, and he's a very popular guy.
But at least on the Republican side, we saw just this week in the primaries in South Carolina, where the president going after a Republican congressman, Mark
Sanford, who also cheated on his wife.
We know that. That cost him the primary, the president's endorsement of his opponent. So what the president says on the Republican primary matters.
It does matter. And listen, he's going to continue to support his friends. And frankly, I'm glad I was his chairman here in Florida, because it should help me long term. The president's a great guy. I think the base loves him. I think he's doing a great job for our country. He's stimulated the economy, of record job growth. There's more jobs and there are employees to fill them. He's doing a phenomenal job as our president. We just got to give him the power and the ability to keep on moving us forward.
Cheryl, I know that you have a dog in this fight, but I mean, it is interesting.
It is, but I'm still caught up in what Joe just said about Mark Sanford cheated on his wife, so that's what defeated him. So it makes a lot of sense to bring a president who has cheated on 2, 3 wives in to support your gubernatorial candidate. That doesn't make any sense either.
Alan, it seems like in a lot of these GOP primaries this year, the overriding factor has been loyalty to Trump, and candidates that haven't been loyal to Trump have been punished. And so it's no small thing to get Trump's full-throated endorsement. But Putnam, Joe makes a good point. Putnam has been campaigning a long time. He's got a big grassroots support network. A Fox News poll came out this week that showed him with nearly twice as much support as DeSantis. DeSantis' campaign seems to largely consist of going on Fox News, although he started to ramp up his grassroots campaigning a little bit. The question is if he's got the president's support and if he's able to ramp up his advertising a little bit and campaign a little bit harder, does that get him and Putnam closer? I think it does.
All right, we have to leave it there.